to the Dadhammer Podcast, a casual Warhammer show where we discuss all things 40k, Age of Sigmar, and literally everything else Warhammer related. So whether you are a beginner, a seasoned veteran, we are so glad that you have joined us on your Warhammer journey. I am your host, David the Warboss, and I'm joined by my friend Medicae Steve. Steve, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. I'm getting all I'm in a good spot. I think I got a lot of my hard work done for a little bit, and spring's coming. It's warming up, raining a lot, but yeah, it's good. Good vibes, man. Good vibes.
Good vibes. I'm sneezing. Seems constantly. So if I sound a little extra nasally, I've got a nasally voice by default, but this time of year, it's a little extra nasally. So my eyes are watering, itching, and for work, I'm having to be on video quite a bit, so I have to look like, especially when I'm in the middle of talking, and then I know a sneeze is coming, and I'm on video.
And once it happens, you're like, I can't think of anything else about not sneezing.
You're supposed to spell like a really difficult word or something, or some weird word, and that gets your mind off of it. I've had somebody to tell me like, "Hey, what color is a purple hippopotamus?" And what? Yeah, and then it just what are you talking about? And then sometimes that'll get your mind off of sneezing.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't think it works either. But anyway, yeah, spring is upon us. I am. What's funny as it relates to Warhammer. I get more excited now about winter time. I mean, I've always liked winter. I like cold weather. I like snow. I like it. I'd rather be cold than hot. If it's going to be super hot, opposite. Okay, because I feel like I can get warm. If it's cold, I can always put on more clothes. If I'm hot and sweaty, there's only so far you can go.
Fair, that is fair.
So I like the cold weather too, because some of the responsibility. There's nothing growing outside. There's no.
Good point. No, you're not wrong.
Okay. Because then it's like, well, it's snowing outside. I can't go anywhere. The roads are bad. I got to stay inside, and then you get more Warhammer stuff done. So
you're not wrong. You're kind of 100% right on that.
Okay, I've convinced you on this show. It's time to turn over a new leaf.
Yeah, I know, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, we so much appreciate you listening to our show. If you like what you're hearing, make sure to rate, follow, subscribe on all the things. If you're watching us on YouTube, definitely give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so others can find the content like that we are creating through the algorithms, the YouTube algorithm, however that works. So, and we appreciate that. Also, leave a comment for our videos, and check us out on our podcast of your podcast streaming site of choice. Love to leave a review. Love to read those. So check us out there. So with that, let's get right into this week's show. We have a great one for you. We have some new stuff. Man, I'm excited. The Orks of 40K. The Green Tide is coming again, even though I didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time with them in 9th edition. That's okay. We got new things to buy. Very excited. We're going to talk all things Ork and 40K. But Steve, this works out for you.
Yes.
Starting a new Custodes army. So we got new Custodes stuff. We got Codex. We got new Battle Force boxes. All kinds of awesome stuff. Talk about that. And then we're going to switch over to Age of Sigmar, because we've got the new edition upon us, as most of you are aware that are listening to this show. 4th edition Age of Sigmar. We've got Skaven and Stormcast, but they have shown off some Skaven new models, and specifically Clanrats, that I am very excited about, as both a Stormcast and Skaven player. We'll talk about that. And then finally, I know, right? It's a big deal. My wallet is very sad, but I am very happy.
Yes.
And as a result of the new models coming out for Skaven and Stormcast, there's been some discontinuation of certain models. So we're just going to broach that topic and what that feels like to get attached to certain models or units within the game, and then only to have them be discontinued or shuffled off somewhere else into the ether. All right. But before we get into all of the wonderful news, let's start off with our reoccurring segment now, I've started to really enjoy this segment, even if my updates are
Mm.
pretty pathetic. Let's talk about our pile of potential. Steve, I'll start with you.
Yes.
How is your pile of potential looking, and what progress have you made, if any?
It's getting there a little bit at a time.
We'll take that.
Uh, I I bought my son the OCR Bone Reaper Vanguard box a while
Hmm.
back because I don't know, we talked about AOS, and I
Yeah.
think I don't know, it's let's play both, right? So he picked the army that he liked, and we got that. So I've got it completely assembled, primed, and highlighted with a little overspray and all that stuff. So now it's just up to him to paint it. But he can play it now as if he wants to. And then I went and did a thing. Uh, I've been on a little bit of a Warcry kick, playing Warcry,
Hmm.
and we talked about those the spearheads, and the one of is the what's the flesh eater courts.
Yep.
So I was
Yep.
like, and then I got the little free model, the little ghoulie guy from the Warhammer store. I was like, oh, they have a war band. I was like, oh, it just happens to be here at Blackthorn.
Oh,
Oh, darn. I'm going to go
so
get that.
convenient. Yeah,
So I
exactly.
did it. I don't know what it is about these little delusional cannibals, but man, I really dig. I started reading their lore, and I think it's goofy. All right, they're gross and they're intimidating and they're very sinister. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But their lore is goofy, like orky lore, because these guys really think they're like noble, chivalrous
Okay.
knights
Okay.
that are out like cleansing the world of monsters and bad guys. No, they're just like ghouls and mutated vampires, and they're really horrible. And I think it's hilarious that they think that they're the
Yeah.
good guys and kind of cool. But I did get those guys started. I'm gonna see if this will work. I don't know if I've done this, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna lean
There he
into the
is.
whole real. I put so I have a lot of fly tie material. So
Hmm.
I put real like wool hair on the back.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's
gonna
gross,
really
dude.
go into
For
this
for those
whole
for those listening, Steve has produced his model that he's working on, and it's got some significant steel wool back hair, um,
yeah.
and it's just pretty gross, man, on multiple levels. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, like, if
It's
you
gonna be
encountered this
awesome.
thing in the middle of the woods or something, and just walked up and it turned around and you saw the back hair situation going on.
Mm.
And I mean, it probably wouldn't feel good either if you went and touched it. You're like, oh gosh,
Scrubby.
so
Kind of
disturbing.
gross and
Yeah.
but I'm looking forward to leaning into that with that very just hopefully quick, grim darky
Hmm.
kind of look, because
Hmm.
they're kind of perfect for that. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be a fun little war band of 10 things to paint up. And if I wanted to start a second AOS army, I think that would 100% be it. I don't know why I like them. I don't know.
It's got
I'm
to
not
be the
even really
goofy
a
stuff,
fan.
right?
A little
It's
bit, and I'm not
yeah.
really necessarily a vampire or zombie kind of guy. I do like that
Hmm.
stuff on movies and things, but their models look really cool, man.
Yeah,
I
they do.
started looking at the range and stuff, and yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. So it'll give me some. Plus, I just enjoy the war cry war band sort of thing. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But
Cool.
that's I did start a little bit on my wife's Sisters of Battle Combat Patrol. So I got a few things put together on that. So I'm making some progress.
Man, you got the
Um,
whole family into the hobby.
yeah, I'm
That's an
probably gonna end up playing
accomplishment.
all these
You
armies,
know,
but
that's okay. You've made more progress than I have. I have
mm,
attempted to get my wife into Warhammer. She could not be more opposite of me and
mm,
just general hobbies. I thought, well, maybe she likes to craft and do crafty things. Maybe we can start
yeah,
building some terrain, or no, it's just I've tried.
no,
It just there's zero
mm.
interest. Is it possible to have negative interest? I feel like that's where she is. Just like don't
We
even mention the word in front of her.
for what it's worth, we've just moved the needle to maybe neutral. Like we
Oh,
might be we might be around zero. This is as much to my daughter has expressed interest. So my wife is more than willing to
Wow.
look at it in a way of, playing with my daughter
Yeah, spend time
against
with the
us to
kids.
help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because we like playing games and stuff anyway. So, like, hey, I got an
This is a
idea.
game.
Hmm.
This is just one that takes 6 hours to play. So just buckle up.
Yeah.
It's
And,
gonna be great.
a lot of extra reading. And
And then she's gonna be like, "Steve, why is there steel wool on the back of this miniature?" You're just like, "Don't worry about it. It's
don't worry
fine."
about it. Don't worry. It's going to look cool
I
when
was
it's done.
I was cleaning the kitchen, so it just happened to be there.
You know, that other hobby I got of fly tying and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna merge the two here.
Well, I think it's cool that you're picking up a different war band, and
Mhm,
the lore. It is what's funny is that they're in their own little mental state, right? They think they're the good
mhm,
guys, and so every time I talk to someone in a Warhammer store, and I remember the first time going into the one out here in Nashville, or in south of Nashville, and I asked him, like, okay, who are the good guys? And of course, the guy says that there are no good guys in Warhammer. Doesn't matter what
right.
game you play. Everybody considers themselves a good guy. They're on their noble quest and
Yep.
they have their reasons. And I don't. I guess that's not necessarily unique to Warhammer because
Mhm,
any type of fictional thing, everyone's got a reason to do what they're doing. Good guy, bad guy, or whatever. But I
mhm.
just think it's funny that even though they look like bad guys, they think that they're doing the right thing,
Oh,
which
yeah. It's so
is just
funny.
great. Yeah, you just can get behind that as a player too, and
Yeah.
it comes out for anyone listening that has never really played, gotten into a game really hardcore. That's one of the best things. And when you read up, I'm not a big lore guy as much as Steve is,
Mhm,
but it's I like reading up a little bit on it, so just so that I have some backstory, so that when I put a certain model down on the table, I'm picturing in my head what they're really like and what they're doing, what some of their motivations are. But now, when I get into specific names and you start telling me why this Primarch is, the third cousin of this one, I'm like, okay, man, I'll
yeah,
I'll
you
just I'll
lost
just
me.
go along with it. Yeah. Does he have a cool gun? Sweet. That's
Yeah.
this is about where I
S
end it.
Does he have, like, a goofy cousin that, does dumb
Yeah,
things? Because that's what I
yeah.
wanna know about.
That's just the orcs.
So, yeah, I know. So, I know you've
Yeah.
been work busy and stuff. Have you gotten much
Mm.
done or getting
Very
there
little.
or
I did get out the. I'm still working on my Krondus dragon. Slowly but surely,
Oh,
I'll just
wow,
kind
that's
of.
worth it.
Yeah, it's not going to be. The thing is that it doesn't. I don't think if I was really focused some time on finishing, I could probably knock it out in an evening or two.
Mhm.
But it's just been the motivation at the end of the day, mentally
Yeah.
to force myself to sit down and do it for a little bit. What's funny is that I need to have like some kind of old school cartoon playing on. I'll sit at my computer and I have my palette and everything out. So pro tip or amateur tip, depending on how you look at it, for anyone listening that I like to have, some people play Warhammery music or maybe some kind
Mhm.
of soothing music or listen to an audiobook. I play retro 80s cartoons that I grew up watching. So I watched Captain N, the Game Master. I started watching
Really?
Gummy Bears. It's just the stuff
Okay.
that, and by watching, I mean, I glance up occasionally. It's just playing in the background and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that episode. Like, wow, this show's
Yeah.
terrible. Gummy Bears still holds up. I'll say that. The old school
Oh,
Gummy Bears
fair.
cartoon still holds
Yeah.
up. Captain and the Game Master is kind of hot
I don't
trash.
know if I know what that is.
You don't know? This was the old.
I
Go
don't
look
think
it
I
up.
do.
It is an old Nintendo. It's essentially a Nintendo commercial funded
Okay.
cartoon where a kid gets zapped into video land while he's playing Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and he gets warped into the TV, and he is now on a quest to save Video Land along with Simon Belmont from Castlevania. And Mega Man's there, Game Boy is there, and they're going up against Mother Brain from Metroid, and the Eggplant guy is there. This is the stupidest show, but it is nostalgia for
I
me
think it
because I
sounds
watched it as a kid.
awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you didn't grow up with it, it's entertaining for about 3 minutes, and then you're like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm good.
I'm done.
Not great. But anyway, so I'll put up these retro '80s cartoons and do my thing. So that's soothing to me for whatever reason. But I have the Spearhead box from Age of
Mhm.
Sigmar, and I cracked that open. I started to assemble, just very very slow, and I started thinking about it,
Yeah.
and I need motivation, and the motivation for me is when's my next game. If I have
Mhm.
if I have an upcoming game and I'm going to play, oh, let's play Spearhead. Oh man, I got to get these models done, and then I have
Yeah.
that reason to paint and get everything done. So I'll get there eventually, but so far all I've done is crack open the box. So
That's good enough though. That works.
yeah, so we'll get there eventually. Yeah, so
Yeah.
good piles of potential, plenty to work on, and then of course the Age of Sigmar edition coming out. We've got Orc releases coming out, so that's my official segue. Let's get into the 40K news and start off with, I am the Warboss, and so Orcs
There you go.
were the big deal for me. So they
Yeah.
have shown off the new Codex for Orcs, and I'll throw it up on the screen here. We got the collector's edition and then the regular edition. I do like the collector's edition; looks really cool.
Mhm.
I am the official broken record on don't buy the collector's edition. Like, come on, $30 for what? Give me a break. $10 extra, maybe. I might spring for it, but come on, $30? No way. So, but the new
Yeah.
codex is here. Looks cool to me. I like the cover. I like the Warboss on the front. I guess, yeah, that is well, there's a Warboss on
Mhm.
one, and I think is that a Warboss? I can't tell. The Warboss on the left there, he's the one that I have with maybe the more modern Warboss. But then the others is
Gotcha.
like a boss knob. I think that's what it looks like.
Oh,
But
okay. I gotcha.
either way, proper Orky on the front, and they have shown off these. They've already talked about this Battle Force box, the Stompa
Yeah.
Boys. Um, the only new model coming in this box is the mech, the big mech. This is a cool box set, especially if you want a Stompa. I have
Mhm.
considered it, but man, that's a lot of plastic to put together. Plus, I've got Age of
Yeah.
Sigmar coming up. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can swing it. As cool as it is, I think if
Yeah.
it had more new models in it, I might go for it. If the Stompa was brand new and a new sculpt, I would 100% be on board.
Right.
But just the grandma orc is just not doing it for me.
It even looks like a quilt. It's like a big metal quilt.
It does. It's like wrapped up in a quilt. Maybe even slightly. You can't tell if the Stompa is slightly reclined in a rocking chair because it's covered up so much.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
You know
just
what's
gonna get my
fabulous?
tea.
We're like rapidly approaching somewhere around our 1 year mark
Mm-hmm.
of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of started off making fun of the Stompa.
We
And here
did.
we are, rolling right back around
full
to it. And
full
I'm glad
circle.
I'm glad old Mrs. Butterworth keeps on
Mm-hmm.
trucking back through our podcast and
Yeah.
leaving, bits of metal quilt everywhere. That's good.
Man.
It's healthy.
Yeah. It's funny is that our first show that we ever did, I remember it was I think I called it Grandma Stompa. I think that was the title
You
of the
sure
show or
did.
something like that. So haven't changed. The only thing that's changed a little bit is that, the Stompa would be cool just to put on the table to look incredibly stupid.
Mhm.
And, it's one of those things where if it did take out anything of significance against your army or a person's army, it would be ironic. And like, you got taken out by the Stompa. You know, it doesn't look menacing. It doesn't look scary. It just looks like, really,
It
this
really
this is what
doesn't.
this is what it is.
It looks like
That's okay.
something our kids would make in the backyard,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
but very expensive version of that. So
Oh, yes.
the other cool thing that they showed off is a brand new combat patrol box. So I
Mhm.
have the old combat patrol box that came with the Def Dread, some Def Coptas, which were new sculpts, new plastic sculpts rather. I really liked the old Combat Patrol box, and now here they are with a brand new one. And these are more of the Squig Hog boys, the Beast Snagga boys is kind of what they're called. And I I don't have any of these guys, so I'm a big orc player.
Okay.
I probably got 3,500 points or so of orcs, lots of boys, tons of vehicles, all of that. I I don't know why these guys just. I'm more of the Mad Max orc player.
Hmm.
I like the Mad Max crazy vehicles running at you, and then these guys
Right.
they're not bad sculpts. They look really cool, but the aesthetic that when I think of orcs, I think vehicles and
Mhm.
modern, and these are more like cave orcs to me. What do you think, Steven?
Yeah.
Is this?
Well, I was going to ask you, how does this mesh with your other art? I know, I feel like you've touched on it before, but I don't disagree with you there. That is a whole different aesthetic, right? It's different than having, tanks and trucks and bikes
Mm-hmm.
and, like the Stompa Boys box. This gets a little bit, I mean, I don't know. Would these guys fit in with a normal orc army? If you were making a
Yeah,
movie, right? If you were making a movie, would you have these guys riding these things next to the guys riding the like ramshackle bikes and
yeah. I don't know.
buggies and stuff? Would that look weird?
I think it would be one of those things where, especially if it was an animation, you would
Yeah.
show the vehicles and the Warboss and all the bullets and everything flying, and then you'd probably cut over to a corner on the side where
Yeah.
the Squig Hog Beast Snagga boys are coming out of the woods or something as like a
I was gonna say
s-
like they're hillbilly cousins or something
yeah,
coming down from the
like
mountain.
an auxiliary unit. Yeah, it's not the main driver of the force. It's just kind of the
Yeah.
like what oh man, you guys are here? Really? Did you bring the watermelon, or
Yeah.
I mean, we
Oh,
can say that
oh,
because
great.
we kind of live in the country. But
Dang. And
um
I like watermelon.
I do too. Who doesn't like
Uh,
watermelon?
I mean, I'm from way south, so I get it.
So
These would be
these
my.
aren't these guys aren't for me personally. I know a lot
Yeah.
of people like them, even if I know they're good units. They're pretty powerful on the
Mhm.
table. Just not my jam. But yeah, it's okay. To
Yeah,
each their
I
own.
get it. Mhm.
They also showed off the new data cards and the dice. The dice I'm definitely getting just because
They look good.
I like them. They don't look bad. I think that's the
Mhm.
main thing. They don't look dumb. I like the little orc symbol on there. Although I do wish they had the more menacing skull looking orc face. That's not
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
negative.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just something a little different. This looks more like the auric uh, kind of symbol to me. Um,
I
but
dig it though.
yeah, I do too. I'm getting two sets, so yeah.
Mhm.
And then but the data sheet cards, not getting those.
Dude, they
Not
keep
because
ugh.
no, I don't want to, but they're gonna change. You know?
I'm surprised that they're still printing those things and trying to sell them.
Mm,
I assume people buy them. I don't know. I mean, I get it if you're I guess if you're a really tournament kind of player and you want to
mm-hmm.
lay this thing out and you've got a certain way of doing stuff, that's fine. But man, I'm with you. I was lucky and I don't feel like I got burned because I never bought them. But boy, we know people who did, and
Yep.
I was just like, I just can't. I can't
Nope.
do it. I just can't do it.
No. And I mean,
Um,
for anyone that's the new player listening to this, these are the data sheet cards that they sell that have all of the stats on them. So, it sounds like a great idea, and
mhm,
in theory it is. The problem is that they change them so quickly and so often. It seems like when they do a balanced data slate, so that's what every
mhm.
quarter.
That they've
And
said they're going to do it every quarter. Yeah.
yeah, or sometimes earlier than that, especially something like
Mhm,
Votan, right, where they change a bunch of stuff immediately out of the gate with ninth edition. And there's nothing to say that when they've done a pretty good job with recent releases. No one's complained a lot about the balance of
mhm.
each army, but my guess is that they'll release these things and then they'll come out and say, okay, well, we're going to make some small changes. Points changes are fine; those aren't going to be printed on the cards, but any particular ability or unit that has something a misprint or something that's slightly overpowered, they're going to say, okay, now we've changed it, and rendering those cards worthless unless you've got whiteout or you're gonna reprint them or do some kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it's like, then what's the point? You might as well just either print them out yourself on a printer and do black and white
Or
or color, whatever, or just use the app.
yeah. Or make your own little 4x6 index cards or
Yep. Yep.
whatever. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know, man.
I wish these things were viable. I wish they didn't change them as much because I would totally get them. I like the idea of laying
Mhm.
everything out on cards, but with the updates to the 40K app specifically, where you could do that battle, was it battle for or command bunker
Yeah,
or
command
whatever it's
bunker
called?
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
this
what
it's
you're talking about. Mhm.
like an active game mode while you're playing. That has made it good enough, in my opinion, where I
Mhm.
don't need the cards.
Yeah,
So anyway, all right.
absolutely.
Well, let's get in now to some of the detachment rules, and this has been some focus of discussion for a lot of people. Of course, we've been through multiple editions at this point where they show off all the new detachment stuff or the new enhancements or stratagems and all those kinds of things. And you go on Reddit, and everybody either complains or rejoices or something because oh my goodness, this specific rule is crazy and it's gonna break the game or whatever. But it's just a small snapshot of one particular
Mhm.
detachment without fully understanding everything else. So I always look at this stuff and I'm saying, okay, that sounds cool. And then that's about it. I don't get too far into it. However, I like how the orcs are unique in that they're each of their little clans are so everything about the orcs is so crazy and just off
Mhm.
the walls insane that I think as a creator, as someone who on the Warhammer team that's going through and writing the narrative and making up these rules, they're just having a field day. Because literally
Oh, man,
sky's the
no
limit with
kidding.
this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean this first one here, they're showing a mob mentality. I it's just it reinforces the green tide where you get a 5-up invuln save each
Mhm.
time an attack targets an orc unit from your army. If it contains 10 or more models, re-roll a saving throw of 1 made for that attack. So
That's
they
good.
they had another enhancement here too. That's basically if you have it's doubling down on the fact that they, as an orc player, if you want to take a lot of infantry, a lot of boys, and you just put, and I have at this point around 120 boys, you put
Mhm.
all those guys on the table, and now you get buffs. You get an 5-up invuln save. You get to add, or you get to reroll saving throws of 1. You get to add strength. You get to do extra attacks, extra all kinds of stuff. It really starts to add on to the
That
fact that you got a crazy army.
that ferocious show off is no joke. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. In my hands, it may not do anything, but anytime you can add strength to an attack is
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. Adding 3 to 1, and you mean you have 120 boys, and all you need is 10 models, and you can add
Yeah.
3 to the strength of those attacks.
Well,
I
you wouldn't have
mean,
100. You would have them in groups of 20 in theory.
yeah,
Um,
but every attack would have
yeah.
extras. I mean, that's taking down tank kind of numbers at that
Mm-hmm.
point, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If moving up from a strength of 3 or 4 to 7 or whatever. I mean, that's really really awesome.
Yeah, and the other thing about 10th edition that a lot of people have said is that it's not a much of a melee edition.
Mhm.
That's mostly shooting. I think just maybe this is a benefit in thinking about rolling out these codexes over time is a little frustrating. Because you don't get the latest and
Man.
greatest if you have a certain army that gets the codex at the very end. For example, but for those that are getting it towards the beginning or the middle, one of the benefits of this is that they get to take feedback from what's
Mhm.
happening in the game. And then, oh, you know what? Melee and infantry is not doing too much. Why don't we use the orcs to really boost that up? And I think this is an example of that. So I'm excited. Again, I don't read too much into this just because
Sure.
it's a more of an isolated type thing. But on paper, it looks really
Yeah.
cool. And then they've thrown some other stuff on the screen. They've got a stratagem called Bulldozer Brutality. Um, more of a fight kind of a stratagem
Mhm.
that can be
Mhm.
used when your models are within 3 inches and they're eligible to fight. you can so such models can target one of those enemy units that's within 3 inches of them and within engagement range of their unit. So the effect of this until the end of the phase, each time you select a unit to fight, when you're trying to determine which units you can fight, any models that are within 3 inches. So I think normally, right, it's that 2 inch, or if you're that first line, first
Right.
line gets to
Yeah.
attack, and then the one right behind them. Now it's like three lines deep, essentially.
Man.
So just thinking about, good
On a
Lord,
20
just
yeah, on a 25 millimeter base, that's even easier to do.
now you've, because that was the thing when I would pile in with a group of 20 boys, as long as I can keep them alive,
Mhm.
that's the trick. But keeping them alive and then packing them all in, and now I've got all of those attacks. Phew, that's just I'm glad I'm getting 2 bricks of dice. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. Forgot about that.
Yeah. The other stratagem here in the command phase, one boy's unit from your army.
Mhm.
Essentially, it's called Come On Lads, and allows you to resurrect them. Now you get to return up to D3+2 destroyed models, excluding characters. And I think I saw this in the article. This is only if I have a Pain Boy, which is the medic unit of
Oh, okay.
Orks. I believe
I
that's correct.
I like this trend, though. I feel like a lot of armies get some sort of way to bring models back.
Yeah,
Um,
I
or
think it's
at least
cool.
wounds. I like that
Yeah.
because, I mean, you could lose a whole unit to a lucky roll
Mm-hmm.
or unlucky roll, depending on which
Mm-hmm.
side you're on. I mean, it is kind of nice that you could possibly bring something back. That's pretty useful.
Yeah. I mean, Lee and I were talking about on last week's show. And check that out. We talked about the multiplayer combat patrol that's in the latest
Hmm.
White Dwarf. So if you are so inclined, check out our show from last week where we discussed that. But one of the things that was really cool about the mission that I played in the multiplayer combat patrol out of White Dwarf was that you could bring back a destroyed unit every command phase. So
Mm.
in my command phase, if it's my turn and I lost a unit last round for this particular mission,
Uh-huh.
we were playing 3 players, I could bring back a unit and put them back in my deployment zone. So what, of course, that makes the game drag on a little longer,
Yeah.
but what it does is that I never felt like my army was completely wiped out. I'm
Yeah.
just, there's never a point where I just feel, man, I'm done. There's no hope.
Hmm.
And I like being able to bring models back, even if it's only a 1 or 2, healing wounds for your vehicles or something. Just makes you feel like,
Yeah.
okay, and I'm still in it. I like that feeling.
Yeah. But it doesn't like end the game or win a
Right.
game in turn one for somebody,
Yeah.
because it makes it a little bit tougher to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Try that, but that's funny.
Yeah, I know. So we've got a couple other detachment rules. This one's called the Dread Mob, and I like again, what I'm saying is that they come up with this stuff. They're just having a field day. So this detachment rule is called Try Dat Button. And
Hmm.
if you have a mech, orcs walker, or Grotz vehicle, I would assume the walker would be the Stompa or like the Gorkanaut. And then the Grotz vehicle, which I believe are those tanks I don't have any of those tanks that are piloted, I guess, by the
Hmm.
Grotz. But if you have one of those, you roll a d6. If you do this detachment roll, then you can select a random ability, whether it's sustained hits, lethal hits, etc. And then, but the cool part is that you have the option to select if you want to say, well, I want the sustained hits or I want only lethal
Hmm.
hits. You can do that, but you have to take a
Okay.
hazardous test at the end. Which
That's awesome.
now the thing is with the hazardous test, if you roll a 1 or a 2, that if you're unfamiliar with
Hmm.
the hazardous rule, if you have that on any one of your
Ouch.
models, yeah, you remove that model, it's dead. Um,
Yeah, it's
so
goner.
a little bit of a risk, but I
One
like
or
the
two, huh?
going back to the narrative. I like the idea of an orc piloted vehicle of some kind. And like, I don't know, try that button, and then it blows
Try
up
that
the whole
button.
unit.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's
Um,
perfect.
yeah, and then they have the bigger shells for bigger gets, which it's just again, it's about the shooting phase. Again, more of the mechanized stuff, and you get to choose to push it, what they're saying, until the end of the phase. Each time a model unit makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, add 1 to the wound roll. If you choose to push it, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that attack. But then you have to take a hazardous test as well. So
Yeah,
pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I like this stuff for the orcs. Really cool. I want to see more. This is just a sample of what they're showing off, a couple of rules, but I haven't seen anything that shocks me. Nothing crazy. It's just more orky stuff, and
yeah,
I like the randomness of it. That's one of the reasons I play orcs, because it's one of those things. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to go out and it's going to be hilarious. I'm going to blow up myself. My vehicles are going to explode by rolling ones, and it's going to be hilarious at the same time. So I love it personally. All right. Well, that's enough about orcs. Let's move on now to something a little more consistent, a little more regimented, very militaristic. These are the Custodes. So we got the new Codex. Steve, what are your thoughts on both the collector's edition and the regular cover?
I prefer the collector's edition cover personally. I mean, I have nothing against Trajan Valors. That's really cool. But the artwork's just different enough. I feel like even in the Orcs one, it's not so much even the subject matter. The artwork's different. Yeah. And I don't know, the artwork on the collectors I just like better. You know what's funny is I was able to buy a collector's edition Slaves of Darkness Battle Tome for like dirt stinking cheap on eBay. And there's no way you could get a 40K one. Isn't that weird?
No.
Anyway.
No. Well, it's just popular.
I mean, I get it. Yeah. I mean, but it's I find it pretty interesting. Like if you wanted to wait a little while, see how many of these show up on eBay, but they never do. They're always more expensive. Either way.
So does that mean you're getting the collector's edition?
Oh no.
No. That's going to be our new tagline. Don't buy the collector's edition
until one of us does. And,
well, that's part of the thing. It's like one of us will be hypocritical at one day, and be like, oh, perhaps. I just was in the store and I saw, why not?
Why not? I had money to burn.
Right. Yeah. But it's exactly what it is. $30 extra. Like you could buy some models for that. A couple sometimes, depending.
You could buy a character.
I know.
And I hate to say it, for a codex that a certain percentage of the words in there are going to be obsolete.
In like a month.
A couple months.
Oh well. I mean, again, if you are all in on the collector's edition, more power to you. It's not that they don't look cool. They look very cool. That's is it worth $30? Value is a matter of perspective. So anyway, cool looking covers. Let's move on now to the they've shown these off a little bit. I just want to put this up. This is the Battle Force box and the Combat Patrol. We've seen both of these already, right? I know we've seen the Battle Force box. Have we seen the Combat Patrol already?
Yes, we have. They just didn't make a huge big deal out of it.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot to make out of it. I feel the same way about the Orcs. It's just sort of repackaged, reorganized existing models with a single new model. I don't have a problem with it. The Battle Force box, I love the bikes. They perform well. I've put 3 of them together. I don't know if I want to do 6 more. It's a bit of those bikes are a bit of a task to paint, because not only you have the bike and the rider, so each one is truthfully like 2 models in one. And it just
I feel the same way about when I did the Votan, the Pioneers, those bikes. Those guys look great when they're done, because if you want to take the time and paint, but there are, the amount of backpacks and extra guns and cables and little bits and pieces. Like if you love painting highly detailed models with lots of bits and bobs all over them, go after some bikes of some kind.
Any kind.
These guys are no different. I think they do look cool though once they're done.
Now I like this Combat Patrol possibly better than the one I have, because it gives you the Alaris
Mm-hmm.
Terminators.
Mm-hmm.
And if I read correctly, it's just like the combat patrol I have now. It's a either or. This is not the whole box. If this is not the whole combat patrol. If you took all of these, it would be way too dominating. So it's an either or. Like I think the one I have, it's you either take 3 bikes and
Oh yeah,
basically
that's right.
one guardian, or you can
Yeah.
take like 4. So I like that you have some flexibility in the
Mm-hmm.
combat patrol, but I don't think I would buy for what I have. I wouldn't buy the Battle Force box. I would go and buy another combat patrol box, and I'd be sitting fairly well with what I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Now this the Blade Champion, I think is what that one figure is called. There's a guy that's running, and you see him. He's got like a different
Wielding
sword.
the
He looks
sword. Yeah.
uh-huh. I think he's called a Blade Champion or something like that.
Sounds good.
I actually bought that as an extra model just because I like the model.
Sure.
That guy's no joke. It couldn't hurt to have two, right? So my
Yeah.
point, like, custodies are great if you're just starting to collect because you just don't have to purchase a bunch of models. You could buy these 2 boxes, and I would be willing to bet that's 2,000 points, or
Yeah. The only
very,
thing,
very
it's
close.
they remind me of like the Age of Sigmar, like the Fire
Hmm.
Slayer dwarves, where it's just a ton of infantry. You know, you do have
Very
the
one
bikes,
dimensional. Hmm.
very one dimensional. It's an elite army, and now when the Votan came out and they were more of an elite army, it was a little bit of a relief because I'm playing. Normally, I'd played orcs, and it's just tons and tons of models, and everything dies so easily. And so it was nice to go from that, everything having at the time 1 wound. Now the boys have 2 wounds, but
Hmm.
having 1 wound, and now going back to with Votan, they were a little more in early ninth edition, a little more resilient. And so I'm like, oh, they're not dead. Oh, cool. And they have a way to ward off some wounds and invulnerable saves and stuff.
Yeah.
So I say all that. I think it's important for especially a new player if you've only got one army. If you only got one and that's all you can afford or that's all you care to. I was the same way. I think once you play with one army over and over again, you need to find if you're going to start a second, I would find
Hmm.
one that's just completely different. You know, don't play
Yes.
another horde army. This is an elite army,
Hmm.
and they're just going to play different. They're going to be beefier. You're not going to be having to remove them if you're playing something like Tyranids or even like Necrons. You know, Necrons are a
Yeah.
different
Right.
flavor as well. I think these guys are cool, especially it's almost like a palate cleanser. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Absolutely.
So cool boxes. Steve, here are the data
Hmm.
sheet cards. We've already talked about the data sheet cards,
Yeah.
but the dice. Are you picking these things up? They look pretty sweet, man.
It's possible. I like the the Custodes semi sorta inquisitorial
Mm-hmm.
badge. I like their badge. Yeah, I very well might get those. I'd like to see them because sometimes that red and gold, those things might
Hard to
disappear.
read.
It could be
Yeah,
hard to read, but that's okay. We'll see.
they're very on brand, though. I mean, I
Hmm.
think it's
They look really
cool to
good.
with the cape. I wonder because it wouldn't have made sense to have red dice with gold,
Yeah,
numbers and stuff.
look a
That
little
that
too.
wouldn't be that wouldn't be Custodes. You know,
No, look a little world eaters.
yeah, exactly. And I think
Yeah,
going gold and red is a really
mm,
clean look. It looks really good.
yeah,
Yeah, whether or not you can read them, it's just going to depend on your eyesight, I
that's
guess.
right. Exactly.
So yeah, so let's look at this first detachment
Yeah.
rule. What are your thoughts on this? This is revered companions detachment rule.
So this is interesting, especially given the boxes that they're putting out, right? I think the detachment that's out there already has something sort of similar, but you basically have to have some Sisters of Silence in your army to pull this out because they're the ones with the Anathema Sacana
Hmm.
keyword. None of the custodies that I know of have that keyword. So you're going to have some sisters, which are not included in these new boxes. It is in the old combat patrol box, which I have. So that could be kind of interesting. Now, they're a cheap unit. It's not going to cost you a lot to go out and buy a box of them to add to your
Sure.
army.
Sure.
It could just it can make the entry point a little different. If you're trying to build an army and you're trying to get into the army with a box or two,
Mm-hmm.
like these big these big boxes that give you some value and discounts. But if you don't have the units that trigger these detachment rules, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. Does
Yeah,
that
but
make
it
sense?
yeah, it does. And I think again, this is a snapshot into the
Yeah.
detachment
Oh,
rules, very
absolutely.
similar to orcs. But I do like the fact that for those listening, this revered companions gives you a feel no pain 5+ against
Hmm.
psychic attacks and mortal wounds. So
Yeah.
it effectively, even though you're an elite army, you've got elite units, and that means you have fewer models on the table just by
Hmm.
nature. They're beefier, they're stronger, but when you lose one, you're gonna feel it, right? It's gonna
Oh, it's
hurt.
gonna hurt.
So this is a way to keep them alive, even against psychic attacks and mortal wounds, which typically wouldn't have any kind of defense to it. So you have a feel no pain
Right.
5+, which is no slouch. It's not even a 6+. A five
Hmm.
plus is pretty good to avoid some mortal wounds towards the end, which is cool. Now they've also got these stratagems. One is
Hmm.
Taloned Pincer and Talons Interlocked. Units can make a normal move up to 6 inches for this. So it's basically allows you to move
Yeah.
around, have some mobility,
Hmm.
which is
What you
cool.
need, because these guys are
Yep.
kind of slow and clunky.
Kind of slow, right? This gives you some
Yeah.
flexibility, almost like a
Hmm.
reaction type of a mentality. And then
Right.
talents interlocked until the end of the phase. Your units can only target that enemy unit, but each time a model in one of your units makes a ranged attack, improve the strength and AP by 1. So that gives you a little more strength on range, which is not typically something that custodians are known for.
They're not great at it. No, they really do need a help, because they're really just pumping out bolter shots. And they're not special bolters. They're just,
Hmm.
just bolters.
Yeah.
So they could use a little help on that, for sure. Again, you got to worry about that keyword, but whatever. Like you said, it's a snapshot. It may be kind of different. I'm sure they're going to have some tanky detachment in the codex that you don't have to have any, so because they die pretty easy. By the way,
Yeah, but
they're cool
I like
units, but
I wonder if they're going to have a detachment, specific rules to focus on more of the bikes being able to fly
maybe.
in and do their
Hmm.
thing. Well, that would be scary. Like a big army full of bikes. That would be a pain in the
Well,
butt
and
to paint.
if you had a land raider, and so the sisters can be put in a
Hmm.
rhino. So if you had rhinos and land raiders and transporting all these things across the board, and you had a bunch of bikes, a really fast, tanky custodies army could be a little bit scary.
Custodies are no joke, man. They
Yeah.
just they look so that the models and the sculpts themselves are so armored up. I mean
Hmm.
the gold army, because when I look at a Stormcast Eternals model, the armor is gold and it looks good, but
Yeah.
it's not as thick. Like these, all of the Custodies look like full on Terminators,
Right.
every single one of them, and they're just
Yeah.
decked out in this really thick, chunky armor, which I think is really cool aesthetically because the units are stronger, right? They're
Yeah.
beefier units, so it's
Yeah.
cool.
Quite
Well,
intimidating.
yeah, so very exciting stuff for 40K coming out specifically for the Dad Hammer crew here on for Orcs. I'm very excited, Steve. I know you're excited about
Yeah.
Custodes, even though you're a fairly new Custodes player. Playing
Yeah.
against them in Combat Patrol was a thing
Hmm.
that we
It
don't
was a
want to
thing.
repeat. We don't want to
Ah,
remember it. No, we've
I didn't
forgotten it
bring it
already,
up. I didn't bring it
and I lost. But we'll just go ahead and say that I lost. But it's okay.
up.
We've moved on, right, Steve?
Is exactly, because
Okay, good.
it, you know,
Hmm.
forever forward.
So let's now switch over from 40K with the time remaining to talk about some Age of Sigmar. Um, one of the things that's come up, and I'll just hit on it quickly because I want to throw this up on the screen. The new
Mhm.
Skaven models have been shown. As a Skaven player, I'm very excited. I'm also a Stormcast player, as I've mentioned. So this is the best of both worlds. So the new box set for, and I mean, I have a complete Skaven army.
Mhm.
It's right on the cusp of 2,000 points. It's not like a huge force. I've got a lot of clan rats.
Mhm.
So these new clan rats are looking really good. They look a whole lot better than the old ones, in my opinion. I'm
Oh,
throwing up
yeah.
another image of
Oh,
the
goodness.
the old clan rat
Woo.
on the left, and now the new clan rat in the middle. I mean, the old ones were okay. They just looked like they were standing there. They looked very Warhammer Fantasy, almost old
Uh-huh.
world, prior to the. Well, I mean, some of the old world stuff has that nostalgia feel on purpose, but these new
Yeah.
sculpts are just a little more dynamic.
That's gone from, like, "I'm gonna eat your cheese," to, "I wanna know your bones." You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other ones just look like they were hungry and hanging out,
Yeah.
and these look like they're crawling around in the sewers, you
Just
know?
gonna eat your bones.
Yeah, pretty gross.
Yeah, they look
I
really good.
yeah, I like these guys. They look very, um, like, hunger deprived. They just
Well,
they look kinda crazy, you know?
and I started playing around, because I got the free version of the Mordheim video game, I think when
Mhm.
they ran some deal a while back,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Wow." I thought Skaven were kinda like, orky part of the, AOS. They were kinda goofy, but
A
no,
little.
man, in Mordheim, they're pretty, like, creepy and scary,
Yeah.
and they're really bringing that role in, and I like that, man. That's really
Now,
cool.
in the previous editions and just the older, they do have some goofiness to them.
Yeah,
Some of their contraptions are a little goofy looking, and
sure.
I like that about them. I think that's
I do
cool.
too.
And even in the trailer that they showed recently, there is some goofiness, but I think they're getting away from the goofy just a tad and going
Mhm.
more towards the sinister. Um, which I don't know. I don't want them to
Oh,
go
yeah.
too far. I still want some of the crazy, because that makes them
Yeah, I mean,
Skaven.
they still got that, like, "Who's building the mousetrap now, dude?" kinda look, like,
Yeah,
they're
for
gonna
sure.
it's sort of a weird thing to think of them as this some strange large mutant rat creature, but they're
Yeah.
highly intellectual, they're making weird stuff, and
Mhm.
Like, kinda Gilligan Island from hell sorta thing, like, making, bamboo siege towers that
Well, their lore is that they have this warp stone. That's the green
Mhm.
stuff that's coming out of the earth, and they're tapping into that, and that's making them crazy. And really have no, um, I guess, no restrictions on how they
Okay.
use it and when they use it. So that brings some of the randomness because it can do crazy stuff for them. It can supercharge their weapons, but also make them explode at the same time. And
Right.
that's built into the way that they play, which is cool. I mean, that's very orky to me. That's
Yeah.
why I like playing them.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but they also their lore is very interesting in that they have these literal clans, but all of the clans are out to murder each other. So none of them wants to be like they all want
Oh.
to be at the top, but as soon as
Uh-huh,
they're at the top, the other clan is trying to take them out. So there's all this infighting, and then as
uh-huh.
soon as the quote unquote leader is taken out, and then another rat takes its place, and it's just this weird, almost like a civil war going on.
Yeah,
But then as soon as an enemy shows up, they all just it's not a coordinated attack. It's
yeah.
just like, oh, there's food, let's go eat. And it's really insane, and
Yeah,
I don't get into the lore very much, but I read through the entire previous codex because I just thought the clan stuff was so interesting.
that
So,
is interesting.
I obviously excited about the Skaven. The
Mhm,
one thing I wanted to touch on here is that with the announcement of these new models and the new additions, they
yeah,
of course are discontinuing some legacy models, mostly resin or even some of the ones that are metal
mm,
based.
right.
Um, you know, I guess I wanted to get your take. They're doing this with both Stormcast and Skaven first, Steve, because I know I've got my opinion. What are your thoughts on them discontinuing or removing models. Doesn't necessarily have to be just for Age of Sigmar. You know, it happens in
Mhm.
40K and every other game. How do you feel about that? Like if they're just saying this unit is no longer part of the line.
It at first it bothered me, but now it doesn't when I think about it, because we've established that this all their game systems are going to be in some sort of seasonal pattern. We're going to get a new edition every few years. I just don't
Mm-hmm.
think that we can argue that point anymore. I think it's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. The upside of that is that you're going to get new stuff, right? No one wants to drive a Toyota that looks exactly like the same as a Toyota Corolla from 1985. Not a bad car, great car. Some of them are still on the road. But, a new Toyota Camry is pretty boss too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not saying like model buildings, like, there's so much more technology in model building. That's not what I'm saying. Sculptors are getting better, but not all that stuff can sit around. I watched a couple of videos talking about it, and we got to remember their company. They have, shareholders and things to meet. They can't just keep buildings full of old models that aren't selling. So they're not taking them away from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can still play them. And if you want to proxy them in a game, and I would dare say, if you want to go to a tournament, and after we talked to Stephen Box, I really feel like you could go to a major tournament and say, hey, I've had this little guy for 100 years.
Yeah.
I want to play him as such and such. And as long as there's no weirdness going on, and like you got some freaky base size that puts you at an advantage or whatever,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's taking these models away from you. But I could 100% understand why they wouldn't want to keep making them, storing them, shipping them, and selling them. And I want to see new stuff. I mean, I'm okay with that. No, I don't, I like them because it gets you excited about it. And I think that's what keeps it kind of fresh and keep it moving. And it actually moves the rules into a different way too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
you're like, hey, we have new characters, new weapons, new figures. Let's write some rules for them. I don't know. I don't think it hurts anything.
I agree. I think what I just I tend to only play models that I like
Hmm.
building or that look cool. I don't buy the resin models. I don't buy
Right.
the. I mean, I remember buying some Defcopters one time, the old Ork helicopter units, and not realizing that they were the lead based miniatures. And I
Oh,
got
wow.
them in, and I was thinking, no, I don't want to mess with this. This
Hmm.
is not something that I want to deal with. And so I sent them back. And then, of course, when they came out with the Combat Patrol, they had plastic ones. I'm like, okay, and they were the more modern sculpts. So, I there's going to be a time when they did it with my Orc boys. I had 90 Orc boys, and then they
Hmm.
came out with new sculpts for Orc boys. And I look at the new ones, I'm like, yeah, they're monopose, but I liked them. I liked the sculpts better than the old ones. I
Hmm.
didn't immediately go out and replace everything.
Right.
You know, um, I think the only time they really retire stuff, they're not going to retire the core
No.
units. Like they're not going to get for Skaven, they're not going to get rid of Clanrats. They're just going to
Right.
upgrade the sculpt. They're not going to get rid of Orc Boys or the Warboss
Hmm.
or even Gazgul. They're not going to retire those units. They might retire the model and come out with a new version of it.
Yeah.
And some people like that or they don't. I think that the same crowd that is really into retro gaming
Hmm.
versus I want to have the physical cart in my hand, and I have to have it that way. I don't want to play it online, or I don't want the subscription based video game system. I want to actually purchase my game. I think it's just
Right.
a, a, a different preference for each person. But for me, I like when they come out with the new models and the new sculpts, and if that means they retire something that I played with on the table for a long time. Okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
I I had it had its moment, and I put that model together. I painted it. I really enjoyed playing with it at the time, and now it's more like a trophy. It's a
Mhm.
something nostalgia. It reminds me of the past. But now I have the new thing, and now I'm gonna enjoy the new thing. And the old
Right.
thing was cool, and maybe one day I'll proxy it to something else. But yeah, I never get upset, I guess, about them
No.
retiring anything
I
personally.
do the only thing I found weird, in this whole thing is all those bespoke Warcry warbands that you could play as allies or different parts of any, certain AOS armies,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to take away those rules, I think. Does
Yeah.
that, so you're not going to be able to plug them into, you're not going to be able to plug a warband into a AOS army
Yeah.
with rules like you can now. I don't know if that's a move to, sequester Warcry in a certain way and
I
move
mean,
it in a
maybe.
different direction, maybe. But I don't know. I like the war bands because it gives you a flavor, and like just like the one that we talked about at the beginning of the show. Like
Mm-hmm.
I may want to buy that army now because I
Yeah.
bought this war band.
Yeah,
So
I get
I don't
that.
know, but man, they are all about product reports and
Mm-hmm.
productivity reports. And when they go into meetings, that's one video saying is like we talked about the digital versus print um, schism within their own company. This has got, I mean, there's no way that this isn't the same kind of thing. Like, hey,
Probably.
what's selling in your department? Hey, what's selling in your department? And if it's just not making the cut, it's just not making the cut,
Yeah. I mean, end of the day, it's a company that wants to make money.
Yeah.
And suckers like us will go out and buy whatever they
Yeah.
produce, and be happy about it at the same time. So we're we're the target audience for sure. I don't think that's a bad thing. There's everything's going to be retired at some point. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
retire, at some point, and then we're just going to play Warhammer in the
All the
retirement home.
time.
Yeah,
It's
right.
all
It's
day,
going to
every
sound like a
day.
good idea. Yeah. So retirement's not a bad thing. I think anyone holding on to old units that they've used for a long time, my recommendation for anyone who really feels hurt or that Games Workshop is taking something away, I would look at it as that model and that unit had its time, and it was
Mm-hmm.
really cool for when I got to play with that in the army, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed that time. I don't regret anything. The paint job's great. Had so much fun. Now it's time to move on to something else. Embrace change. It is the only constant, as everybody knows. So I would just encourage you to just keep going. Get the
Well,
next thing. Put it in your army.
and they've kept up their end of the bargain. I haven't seen
I
a
agree.
new. They've elevated it, and I
Yeah,
can't be mad about that.
yeah, I agree. Well, I'm happy with where Warhammer is, both Age of
Mm-hmm.
Sigmar and 40K. I like all the new stuff. The new sculpts are sweet. I'm excited, even though my wallet's very sad. I'm excited for
Oh
all the
man, no
new
kidding.
stuff coming out. I got to start making some more progress on my pile of printing for sure. But hopefully next show I'll have some progress to report, and we'll hear from other members of the team as well. So.
Absolutely.
Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. That'll do it for this episode of the Dad Hammer podcast. Thanks to Medicae Steve. I am David the Warboss, your host. And until next time, remember that all of your pile of potential boxes can double as terrain. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.